Hey folks, and welcome to my review of the Sakhir Grand Prix. Fair to say it was an eventful Grand Prix, a top three of Sergio Perez taking his first ever win in Formula One, Esteban Ocon securing his first ever podium in Formula One, and Lance Stroll taking third and getting his second podium of 2020. And yes, you're right, that is the top three that finished in Sakhir. Sergio Perez first, Esteban Ocon second, and Lance Stroll third. An eventful race, and a race where Mercedes could so easily have finished 1-2, but we'll come on to talk about Mercedes later on. But you have to start with Racing Point, and it's coincidence, isn't it? You look at the timing of Sergio Perez's his first ever win in Formula One at a time where we're questioning whether Sergio will be in Formula One next season, which I find absolutely ludicrous. And I think if Red Bull have got a tough decision in terms of whether they're going to keep Alex Albon or go with Sergio Perez or Nico Hulkenberg, and I think Sergio Perez has given them an even bigger headache because what Sergio was able to do when you consider he was spun on the opening lap and down to the back of the field on the opening lap. The way he fought his way through the field to then end up leading the race, it's quite phenomenal, really. And okay, perhaps circumstances turned in Racing Point's favour, but the Racing Point was quick throughout the whole weekend. They had a very quick car, and Sergio definitely deserves the win, and a fantastic way for him now to put on his CV that he's a race winner now. And I mentioned about timing. What a great time to secure your first ever win in Formula One. No, we know that he's leaving Racing Point at the end of the season, but Racing Point's loss will be another team's game, whether that is next season or whether that is in 2022, where we know that Sergio's already said that he does have options for 2022. But I just think that it would be an absolute travesty if Sergio is not on the grid for next season. And a talent like Perez, he should be on that grid in 2021. So, the way Sergio conducted himself, throughout the whole weekend, but the way he performed, he absolutely deserved his win. A fantastic story, not just for Racing Point, not just for Sergio, but for Formula One as well. Seeing the underdog come out on top. We saw earlier this season with Pierre Gasly winning in Monza, and it's good to see those teams, those midfield teams, winning races, winning at least one race this year. So I think it's great for the sport, and I think we want to see more of that, going into the long term of Formula One. So yeah, fantastic result. I'm so happy for Sergio Perez, and I really genuinely hope that he does find a seat for next season. Whether it be a Red Bull, only time will tell. But you think of that Verstappen and Perez at Red Bull, that would be really mouth-watering. And by having that partnership, um, you just know that Red Bull then not having to rely on Verstappen. Now you've got someone as experienced as Perez, fantastic with time management. He's a quick driver as well, and he's proven that throughout his whole career. And that Verstappen Perez partnership potentially Red Bull next season, that does sound exciting. And you could definitely see both of them taking the fight to Mercedes in 2021. So yeah, like I say, massive congratulations to Sergio on taking his first ever win in Formula One, and also you got to give a shout out to Lance Stroll as well. So another really good drive from Lance, and yeah, credit where it's due. Obviously, he will have been disappointed with that lockup during mid part of the race, which enabled Checo to get past Lance. And obviously, Lance, I'm sure, will be frustrated at the fact that Esteban Ocon was able to get by after the pit stops during the second part of the race. But you have to say, Lance did another fine job, and he's had a decent season this year. Okay, after Monza, where he took his first podium of 2020, he did have that spell where things were not going for him, but he's kept at it. And credit to Lance. I think he can take a lot of positives from this year, and a really good weekend for Racing Point that saw them retake third in the Constructors. I mentioned the fact that the battle was going to go down to Abu Dhabi. I said that about 2 or 3 races ago, and still obviously still stand by that. So it's definitely it's not a foregone conclusion that Racing Point will take third in the constructors. It's definitely all still to play for in Abu Dhabi, and we saw last weekend that it was McLaren that came out on top in the battle in the midfield. This weekend it was Racing Point, so you never know. Next weekend it could be Renault to take control. But yeah, like I said, fantastic weekend for Racing Point, and fantastic. We come on to fantastic. Um, Fantastic result for Esteban Ocon, taking his first ever podium in Formula One. And what I just wanted to add very quickly as well, in regards to Sergio Perez's first one in Formula One. I'm not going to lie, I did have a tear in my eye at the end. I did get a little bit emotional. So but yeah, like I say, cracking win for Sergio. But coming back on to Esteban, it's not been a straightforward year for the Frenchman. He has had his bad luck this season, but with your luck, it does even out during the season. And Esteban put in a fine display um, throughout the race and on Sunday. And yeah, cracking job from Esteban. And hopefully, fingers crossed, he can take that going into 2021. And if that result doesn't give him confidence, then I don't know what will. But yeah, really great drive from Esteban, and really happy to see him on the podium as well. He's a good talent, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see Esteban becoming a world champion. Whether that happens sooner or later, I'm not sure, but I could certainly see him becoming a world champion. And I think he's a great talent as well. Now he's drivers like Ocon, Leclerc, Gasly, Norris. They're the future of Formula One. So really happy for Esteban Ocon to get his first ever podium in Formula One, and another podium for Renault as well this year. So Renault have definitely made some strides, definitely made big strides this year, and they deserve to be where they are. And okay, they're lying fifth in the constructors, but they're definitely still within the hunt to finish third in the constructors. So it's still all to play for. But yeah, great result for Esteban. On the other side of the Renault garage, with Daniel Ricciardo, obviously he will have been he'll be a bit frustrated knowing that it could have been him that was finishing in the top three, or even challenged for the race win. But it wasn't to be. But even so, Daniel finishing fifth, now another strong weekend for Reynolds, and a lot of positives that the team can take from the weekend at Sakhir. But yeah, not a bad weekend at all for Renault. Not the result. Obviously, Daniel in normal circumstances, I think fifth place. No, Daniel would be happy with, but with the way the race unfolded, I think when he looks back at that race, he'll be disappointed to finish fifth, knowing that seeing his teammate finish second, there was more that he could have done. But like I say, strong weekend for Renault, and they're very much in contention um, to finish third in the constructors. So we come on to talk about McLaren, and like Daniel Ricciardo with Carlos Sainz, who finished fourth. Under normal circumstances, I think Carlos would be really happy with a fourth place finish, but knowing he was so close to um, being on the podium, it wasn't didn't finish too far behind Lance Stroll. So that will have frustrated Carlos, but at the same time, finishing fourth was a great result for Carlos. Not the most straightforward of weekends for Lando Norris, having to start at the back of the grid. But then he had a great first lap. I think he managed to get, I think, 8, 9 places on the opening lap. So that was a really good start from Lando. Wasn't quite able to make the progress that he would have liked, I'm sure, from that point. But even so, finishing 10th, considering where he started at the start of the race, I think he can take a lot of positives from that. So, not a bad weekend for McLaren, but I think it's a weekend where I think they were about 16, 17 points clear of Racing Point in the constructors before the start of the weekend at Sakhir. Now they find themselves 10 points behind Racing Point in the constructors. So, at the moment, you have to say, going into that season finale at Abu Dhabi, it's Racing Point who are in the box seat to finish third in the constructors. But the beauty with sport is that anything can happen, and we saw that on Sunday. So like Renault, McLaren are definitely not at the battle for finishing third in the constructors. So not a bad weekend for McLaren, but I'm sure they would have liked to have achieved more. So we come on to Mercedes and a weekend of what could have been for Mercedes. Um, Everything was going right for them in the race. 1-2, and a 1-2 finish looked a certainty for Mercedes, but it all unfolded at the pit stop where they double stacked, and obviously we saw the wrong tyres go on for both cars, and it was, yeah, not it really unravelled then for Mercedes, and you have to feel for George Russell on his debut for Mercedes, standing in for Lewis Hamilton. George did everything right this weekend. Wasn't too far behind Valtteri in qualifying, so just minimal. Not far behind Valtteri in qualifying, so ended up finishing qualifying second. Got past his teammate on the opening lap, and really was able to control the race, George. No major issues, and everything was going swimmingly well for the Brit. Like up until that pit stop, and then even after that pit stop, George, was still in contention to take the race win, but then he had to then pit late on, because the team thought that said that they had puncture. So that was, yeah, very frustrating for George, and I know, and we saw from his reactions at the end of the race that he was really frustrated. But at the same time, I think George has definitely proven that he can cut it. It's yes, it's only one race, but he can cut it at a top team, and he's proven that. And yes, he scored his first points in Formula One, but I'm sure that's little consolation. Um, in terms of how the race unfolded in the end for George. But yeah, having said that, there are a lot of positives that George can take from the way he performed at Sakhir, and he just has to focus on that. And if Lewis it doesn't recover in time for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, then George will get another opportunity at Mercedes, and who knows? He will go into that Grand Prix. Obviously, the frustration of not winning in Sakhir, but at the same time, he should focus on the positives. The fact that he was really close to Valtteri in qualifying, but also the fact that when Russell was out in front, he was able to control it, and actually, he did a very good job. So, yeah, I genuinely feel for George, because had he um, not what happened in the race, had it been straightforward pit stop, had they not had their issues, then George would have won that race, and it definitely would have been a debut to remember for all the right reasons. So, but yeah, really hard luck for George, and also for Valtteri as well. He's had a lot of bad luck this year. And again, like George, you have to feel for Valtteri because he did everything right. Put the car on pole on Saturday. Okay, he didn't get off to the best of starts on Sunday in the race, but even so, he was still in a position where actually he could win the race. So I genuinely feel for both Mercedes drivers for the race in Sakhir, and the way it panned out for both of them. So not the race they would have wanted, but that's sport. You have your good moments, you have your bad moments, but it's about when you have those bad moments, you bounce back, and I'm sure Valtteri and George will definitely bounce back. And I think what George has shown, that this display in Sakhir, he's definitely put his name in contention to have a Mercedes seat in 2022. Because if that's what he can do in one race, then that is quite special what George was able to do. And like I say, that could potentially put pressure on Valtteri to perform not just in Abu Dhabi but also for next season as well. Because if he doesn't perform, um, then George Russell could put himself in a prime position to actually uh, be at Mercedes in 2022. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, genuinely feel for both George and also for Valtteri at the weekend. But I know that they'll definitely come back fighting in Abu Dhabi, and will definitely want to end the season on a real high. So yeah, that is Mercedes, and just want to very quickly just make three other points in terms of talking about AlphaTauri very quickly. A solid weekend for Danny Kvyat. great job in qualifying, putting the car in 6th, and then finishing the race in 7th. So it does look like Daniel won't be in Formula One next season. But no, the way he's performed for AlphaTauri, Toro Rosso, in his previous guys, then he's done a solid job, and he did another solid job in Sakhir. So great job from Danny Kvyat. Didn't quite work out for Pierre Gasly. But at the same time, when Pierre looks back at the season, he can look back at 2020 with so many positives, and he's without doubt been one of the drivers of the season. And then just quickly on to Red Bull. Unfortunately, we saw Max Verstappen having to retire from the race at the very start through no fault of his own. We saw Charles Leclerc send Sergio Perez spinning on the opening lap, and then as Max was trying to avoid the incident, he didn't really have the space, and then that resulted in him going into the barrier. So, yeah, real shame for Max, because had that not happened, I think Max would have been in real contention to win the race. And as for Alex Albon, not a disastrous race for Alex, but not a brilliant race, because I'm sure he would have liked to have been right up there. And as I mentioned with Sergio winning the race in Sakhir, does that add a little bit more pressure on to Alex going into final race at Abu Dhabi? I really do. I think Alex will be under a lot of pressure in that final race, because if he doesn't deliver, then there's every chance that it could be Sergio Perez alongside Max Verstappen at Red Bull next season. But having a year out for Alex might not necessarily be a bad thing. No, Christian Horner's already said that he will be part of Red Bull program for next year. So whether it will be having a year out, or whether that will be dropping down to AlphaTauri, could be a good thing for Alex, just to get just for him to really get his career back on track, because it hasn't worked out for him this year. Yes, he's had 2 podiums, but he just hasn't had that consistency that Red Bull will have wanted. So yeah, really big final race for Alex Albon coming up to prove that actually he's worthy of that Red Bull seat alongside Max Verstappen next year. And then just finally, just want to quickly end by saying well done to Pietro Fittipaldi and also Jack Aitken. Yes, Jack did have that incident during the race, but throughout the weekend he didn't do a bad job. As a youngster, you're always going to make mistakes, and unfortunately, in that during the race, Jack did make that mistake, which resulted in the safety car coming out. But in qualifying, now Jack wasn't too far away from his more experienced teammate in Nicholas Latifi. It wasn't too far behind him at all, and then Jack was able to. No, he didn't do a bad job in the race either, despite that incident. So, yeah, credit to Jack where it's due. I thought he did not a bad job at all, and exactly the same with Pietro Fittipaldi. I think with both drivers, they would have obviously wanted to finish the race, and they achieved that objective. And Pietro didn't put a foot wrong, and it was always going to be a hard weekend for both drivers. But I thought they did really well, considering the circumstances. I think there's a lot of positives that Pietro can take from the weekend, and for me personally, I didn't see him put a foot wrong, and yeah, a lot of positives that both drivers can take from the weekend, and potentially if Lewis it doesn't recover in time for Abu Dhabi, then we will see Jack again back in the Williams, and Pietro, who we know will take Roman Grosjean's place in Abu Dhabi. But yeah, really good job. Not a bad job at all from both drivers on their Formula One debuts. And just finally, just want to quickly end by wishing Roman Grosjean all the very best. Obviously, just a shame that we weren't to see him race for Haas again in Abu Dhabi, and then in what could potentially now have been his final race in Formula One. But yeah, really want to wish Roman all the best. Just want to continue to all the very best with your recovery, and yeah, really hope to see you back in the Formula One paddock, whether that is racing again, or whether just to see you again. So, Roman, want to wish you all the very best for the future, and also want to wish you and your family and friends all the best wishes, and we're thinking of you. And also Lewis Hamilton as well. We really want to wish you a speedy recovery as well from COVID. Hope you're okay. So that's the end of my review. So if you want to get in touch with any messages or talk about Formula One, then you can message me. I'm on Twitter at Baggies20 and I'm also on Instagram at ManishPatel89. Take care, everyone.